I might be online, Banda. I'm not sure, honestly. I got church here in about an hour and a half, so got to do that. Got to get my time with the Lord in. Definitely need it this week. Seen a lot of evil happening out there, and the way to stay optimistic about the sheer amount of evil out there, which you got to understand is the majority. Which I actually kind of had this revelation recently, where I had heard before that we're all slaves to sin and that the population in general is not good. And I hadn't really thought that much about it. And I honestly resisted it, especially before I was a Christian. Born again Christian. I came back to the faith 3 years ago. It saved my life. Very glad I did. But up until then, I was agnostic for 20 years. But the ironic thing is that I was agnostic, but I thought if you would have asked me, hey, Josh, are people fundamentally just kind of at a baseline level, are people good or bad? I would have said good. That's what I wanted to believe. I was like, I've lived most of my life, and it's not like people come around constantly trying to hurt me or anything like that. So, in that sense, I'd say most people are good. And, I'm sure you guys in chat are good people, and you probably think I'm a decent person. Maybe not, based on some of the things I say. But it's not like you go outside and people are ripping each other limb from limb, right? It's not like you go outside and people are just stealing everything from each other, murdering each other. So these egregious crimes, they're not highly visible and they're not always happening. So I just kind of thought, yeah, people are just at a baseline good. That was my old worldview. That was also when I knew basically nothing about politics. I had no idea how the government worked. I had no idea who was running the government. I still thought that the people you voted for were running the government and that they were running it on your behalf based on what you asked them to do when you voted for them. So if you vote for them wanting lower taxes, teach the classic curriculum in schools, don't teach critical race theory, don't teach the kids that white people hate black people, don't teach the kids that men hate women, don't teach the kids that men can get pregnant. All the basics that used to be kind of assumed. Well, you think that when you vote for a politician with very clear instructions like that, and they say when they're campaigning that, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do when I get into office. And then they get into office and they don't do it. It's pretty disappointing, and it kind of opens your eyes to, okay, maybe you were doing this for some other reason. So, after I found out the rampant lies taking place in the whole political sphere, in combination with reestablishing my relationship with God and learning a bit more about the nature of evil, when you go back to Adam and Eve and that people were good, this is what the Bible teaches. It teaches that people, human beings, were good. However, guess what happened? The fall of Adam and Eve happened. Satan, got his influence in there. And ever since then, every human being born since then has been a slave to sin. And the funny thing is people want to deny that. Like, I'm not a slave to sin. I'm a good person. Really? Really? You don't have thoughts and actions based on those thoughts in relation to greed and lust and envy and sloth? I'm sure you do. I'm sure you have those thoughts all the time, and I'm sure a portion of them you actually act on. How many of you can say honestly that you don't jerk off, that you don't look up porn? Not many of us. All of us are weak to lust. How many of you can honestly say that you find out your best friend just got a $50,000 raise. Meanwhile, you're having a hard time making ends meet with your job. You feel like you don't get paid enough, and you don't start feeling envy towards that person. How many of you can honestly say that? How many of you can honestly say that after you have a long day, You just want to go home. You want to be with your dog or maybe your partner or whatever. And then a friend or a family member says, hey, I need something from you. And your response is one of greed that says, listen, I had a long day. I only have so much time per day. And the little bit of remaining time I have, I just need to spend it on myself. And that's just saying you're greedy with your time. All of us are greedy with our finances as well. Don't even try to pretend that you aren't. I try to be a good Christian. I know that I could give more. But the point I'm making here is that all of us continue to sin every single day of our life, and we will until we're dead. And that's what I mean by being a slave to sin. And the only way you fix that perpetual cycle and not feel extremely guilty about it the entire time is through Jesus Christ. That's the only way. That's why he died on the cross. That was the gesture and the sacrifice that he made. I rant about this pretty often because there's a misconception about how Christianity works, that it's some kind of bargain where you say, okay, if I believe Jesus Christ existed and he was the Son of God, then that gets me into heaven, right? Like that's the exchange. And that's just the complete wrong way to interpret Christianity or approach it. You would prefer original European religions like paganism, but kind of not necessary. You can be based and not religious. You can be based and not religious. I don't know, man. It's tough. Like I said, I spent 20 years agnostic, and I fully understand the reasoning for being there. Up until then, I had not seen any proof that God existed, and so I had to call myself agnostic. But things change, my friend. Avery, when you get your proof that God is real, undeniable proof, when he actually speaks to you, that'll fuck you up. That'll change your entire worldview. And, that's where I was going with this whole story is once I found out that God was real, the implication there is also that Satan is real. And Satan is all things that are evil. And so then when you see in the world people acting in evil ways, you start to understand who they're working for. I'm not saying that they have a personal relationship with Satan. They don't sit there and plan their day by saying, what would Satan want me to do? What's happening is that he has a way of fooling people into working on his behalf. I sometimes see religious people only do religious things. I probably spend about an hour to 2 hours a day with my faith, whether that's sharing it on here or, on Sundays going to church or listening to somebody else talk about their interactions. So it's something you have to maintain a relationship with, just like every other relationship. So it's not like you can become a Christian and really be one by just spending an hour a month or maybe going to church once a month or something like that. Somebody talks about religion all the time. They're wasting time on something that's not deserving of the time. It's definitely deserving of the time. It's like we live in a timeline, right? We live in current day, but current day is 2,000 years after the conflict of the Jews versus the Christians. And that conflict never ended. Well, the hard thing is they get integrated. The politics and the religion. For example, I consider myself a Christian nationalist, meaning I believe that the best thing for America is to go back to how it was founded by Christian fathers with a Christian purpose. Yes, the woke people, you got to figure out, why are these people woke? I spend many, many hours a week talking about woke people. That's my Beholden to Fitness stream, Beholden to Truth stream. And the woke scourge of the earth that are basically running the show right now, where are they getting their marching orders? You should really ask that question, because there is an identifiable origin for these things. The way you find it is by looking at the money, and then you look at, okay, who owns these donation groups that are providing the money to elect the people who enact these woke policies? It is a very long It's not a road, it's a rabbit hill, a rabbit hole, right? The red pill rabbit hole goes deep. And it's so deep that it goes back thousands of years. Suspect is that there's a hidden LGBTQ mafia that was in place since long ago, since the 1950s, if not earlier. And this LGBTQ mafia is what's now pushing all this insane and more insane sex stuff. Yeah, the transgenderism, all of that. This has happened before. I mean, this is why it's important to understand history, is because we saw all of the same shit happen is part of the events for the causes for World War I and World War II. When Germany was getting pushed over by the Bolsheviks, they said, look, we see what you're doing. You're coming into our country and you're trying to destroy the family unit. Gay people are easy to compromise and blackmail, so USSR naturally went after gay people back then. So that's the connection to faith. I mean, that's why Christians, Catholics are in their origin, in their purest form, against homosexuality. It's not because they're bigots. It's because they know what happens. They know the psychological devastation that homosexuality causes in aggregate. Yeah, the cities are the problem. The major city, population dense places, that's no good. And I actually live close to one right now, and I'm trying to get out of it. I live close to the Portland area in Oregon, and it's like the woke capital of the United States. And so I'm trying to get back to Alabama. That's where I'm from. I'm moving there next month. Moving back. Spent 7 years out here in the West, and it's hard stuff. I mean, it's actually actively aggressive towards me at this point. City culture has always been hedonistic, degenerate, and permissive to where it allowed insane behavior, crime, etc. And the thing is I didn't know that when I moved here. I was like naive and noob, and like I said, had not yet discovered Christianity and all these things, or not yet come back to it. What's up, the worst gamer on? Glad to see you back. Yeah, so we've been ranting politics now for what, 40 minutes, and I meant to actually get on here and talk fitness. So let's do that. Let's pull up the fitness board. Let's get into some fitness